My thoughts crystallized, a Damascene moment. I cannot navigate. I cannot ride. I know nothing of horses. It was day 5 of the Gaucho Derby. We'd camped lakeside overnight, untethering horses before dawn to graze before riding into Satan's Arboretum, a mountain mosaic of dense and tangled forest, swallowing bogs and deep, shaly ravines. Now we, me, Fran, and our 2 horses, a bay mare and a palomino gelding, huddled close on a crumbling bluff just meters wide. I was unsure how we got there, and unsure how we'd get off. My gaze met Fran's, and our mirrored expressions did the talking. What the fuck do we do now? Caught on camera, that shared look would perfectly open the credits for any survivalist TV show. Despite dozens of multi-day and multi-week hikes, decades as a sometimes endurance athlete, and a lifetime riding horses, I was humbled. I mumbled, "I got nothing." Fran didn't reply, instead turning to lead her palomino down the west-facing cliff in a serpentine descent much steeper than one I had only just rejected as too risky. But really, how risky was it? Billed as the greatest test of horsemanship on earth, the 2024 Gaucho Derby was the 3rd running of this 500-plus kilometre horse race across Argentinian Patagonia. Plus, because riders make their own path from waypoint to waypoint with no marked track, some riding 700 kilometres or more. Sure, it's remote, but medics and vets can be summoned with the press of a button, and satellite beacons keep HQ ever informed of each competitor's exact location. There's even a dedicated helicopter on standby 24/7. For most equestrians, dealing daily with these sometimes unpredictable 600-kilometre animals, this kind of safety net is an almost unimaginable luxury. The Derby concept is simple. Push riders to the limit of their endurance over hundreds of kilometres while swapping them onto fresh horses at regular intervals. And it's well tested. For 15 years, the Mongol Derby, sister race and progenitor of the Gaucho Derby, has challenged riders over 1,000 kilometres of Asiatic steppe, trading for new mounts at vet checks set roughly 40 kilometres apart. Yes, that 40 kilometres is the sweet spot, the distance any healthy, sound horse can comfortably travel and easily recover from. To run further, horses need specific training. Despite a fair bit of draft breeding, these Gaucho Derby horses were good types. Built solid, with straight legs, short cannons, and strong curved necks. Attributes praised by riders the world over. We felt well mounted. Because gauchos like a bit of a show, the horses are trained for a fast and fiery depart. Riders need to mount up quickly. But the horses soon settle, with most trotting balanced on both diagonals and cantering on both leads. These are working horses with a clear job rounding up stock, sheep, cattle, other horses, and they know it well. There's the rub. Most of the Gaucho Derby horses covered at least 80 kilometres and some much more. None of them signed up to be ridden all day and into the next, and without a cow in sight. Unprepared physically and uninspired mentally, they showed all the get up and go of a soggy mop. As the miles passed, the Derby became less a horse race and more a test to kick and drag unwilling horses along the edge of the Andes. Except when, all kinetic and ardent, Katie's Arabian passes us by. For a blissful hour our horses trot vigorously in the slipstream. My heart soars. The world begins to... But no, the world will have to wait a bit. To appreciate this moment, let's rewind to sun up the day before. We were already eliminated from the race proper and now riding in the adventure category. No longer eligible for an official placing, having been carried forward by car to Estancia Cachaqui. At the pre-race briefing, we had been told the horses at this station were particularly good. A little spicy with some Arabian blood, they said. Originally bred by the Bedouins, these desert war horses are an ancient breed, renowned for their stamina and their get up and go. My horses at home are Arabians, so I was looking forward to a nice ride out from this check. No Arabian for me, however. Instead, a chubby little piebald. Soft and fat, Bob the Cob, like most in this corral, looked a horse long spared the saddle. Fran's mount, eventually nicknamed Larry Lasagna, no prizes for guessing, proved of similar ability and disposition. The next 48 hours were among the most dispiriting of my life. We had, and would yet, enjoy moments of searing beauty on this trip. Flamingo-filled lagoons, a scramble of fox cubs spilling from a furrow. Most days, the mid-morning sun coaxed thermal-born condors to touch down and rummage among wind-whittled guanaco bones. And those ever-present snow-capped peaks, studded cobalt with shimmering lakes. But our days with Bob and Larry ranged over Monte Desert, passing abandoned estancias in a province stripped bare by 7 million sheep, hellish winds, and a warming climate. Our mood matched the land, and our sullen horses averaged 2 kilometres each hour, maybe 3 if we led them, so we mostly did. So, brilliant and bright, vivid and vibrant, Katie's grey mare was a literal sight for sore eyes grown tired from wind, dust and desolation. If not for Katie and her mare, we'd likely still be out there now. Despite working as hard as any, that Arabian charisma inspired us all to the next vet check well before cut-off. Each horse's heart rate must recover to 55 beats per minute or less within half an hour of arriving at the check, or you cop a time penalty. All through the ride, Fran and I took 5 to 10 minutes to present the vets our horses. That's the time it took to unsaddle, find and unzipper the right pocket to rummage up the vet card, and otherwise get our shit together. We never needed longer. Indeed, after the first couple of checks, we never again gave heart rates a thought, as cardiovascular stress just wasn't, or shouldn't, be an issue in this race. So, it was no surprise when Bob pulsed in at 40, his heart as desultory as his urge to cover country. More surprising though, the vet gently chastising us. You could have ridden faster. This wasn't the first time race officials hinted we should push our horses harder. Cue horse welfare. Simply put, the Gaucho Derby vet checks lacked rigour. Most of these horses don't lead at a trot, and it's impossible to assess the soundness of horses tightly held and running crabwise from a young gaucho whooping and chasing from behind. At one horse station, my assigned horse had an open knee wound, still weeping, the vet saying, "Oh yes, we treated him yesterday, he's fine." Noting my nonplussed expression, she added, "But you can draw another if you want." I also saw a clearly lame horse passed okay by vets, and watching nearly every horse cross the finish line, most were backsore and leg weary, certainly not fit to continue. You might get away with this in Argentina or Mongolia, but likely not in the US or Australia, where Derby organisers are looking to expand their race concept into a World Series. Don't get me wrong, I'm no bleeding heart. For a decade, I was a full-time professional horse masseur and hoof care provider. I've worked on national champions and international representatives across several horse sports. For a time, I was also a keen endurance rider, and with some fast enough times. 80 kilometres in 3.5 hours and 160 kilometres in 10.5. I'm not tooting my own horn here, far from it, as many, maybe most, of the other Gaucho Derby competitors sport far more impressive resumes. I'm simply making the point that horses can happily work and work hard, but they must be properly prepared and willing to do the job. Travelling off-piste in challenging country is arduous, but I can't agree with Gaucho Derby organisers that these horses are fine over the extra distance through 3 vet checks because they travel at slower speeds. Rather, the reverse. The horses were slow because they went too far. Just consider the speed of the winning riders, travelling at a daily average well under 8 kilometres an hour. A fast walk. But enough. In the event, only one horse among several hundred had a serious problem, a colic that was promptly treated by the vets, likely the result of several days squabbling for hay in an overfull corral, the weather warm under a smalt sky. For the rest, there were some hard days at the office, sure, but nothing a week's grazing in the paddock wouldn't put to rights. Continuing in this positive vein, I will say this. The race organisation and logistics were good. In fact, very good. Largely thanks to some excellent staffing by Eric, Holly and Stevie on the ground, with Kathy overseeing from HQ. Themselves all previous Derby competitors, this tetrad ably managed contradictory goals, keeping the race safe and fair, while doing their best to get competitors across the finish line. They prepared a brutal and relentless race, yet generously forgave some of the rule breaking, downing fences, abusing race staff, seeking assistance from race staff, messaging folks back home, by those competitors not quite ready to challenge the Derby on their merits. I did notice though, a large social media following is no handicap. One such competitor skipped 2 days riding and carried forward by car, yet still awarded a finish. Given how vast and remote the country, simply finding and delivering the hundreds of horses to put underneath competitors, race staff, vets and medics is something of a miracle. I wailed away many race hours pondering, how the hell did they pull this thing together? And how the hell did they afford it? Even with a life-changing entry fee of US $16,000 a pop, with 41 riders that's US $656,000, or over $1 million Australian dollars, it's still hard to see how the Gaucho Derby breaks even, requiring as it does crew in the hundreds, payments for horses, outrageous insurance, a chopper on standby, among many other costs. But I have an obvious solution. Given all the extroverted, type A personalities competing as if their very lives depended on the outcome, simply give each a GoPro and make the race an actual reality TV show. Sell the footage to the highest bidder. There's viewer favourite heroes and villains aplenty among these fervent competitors. The odd broken leg, punctured lung, or spell of heat exhaustion only adds to the drama, and all in a second to none setting. You're welcome. Though the days were arduous, it's the evenings I remember best. Walking to the river, wiping dirt from lips, wind-chapped and bleeding, to wash away a long day spent under too many clothes. The muzzy chatter of gauchos by the campfire, all rolled up shirt sleeves and peaky blinders profiles, while, pitched nearby under a nylon fly, Fran and I fall to sleep, my mind gently cartwheeling as the backwash of Malbec sings through my head and burns through my stomach. Waking nights to check hobbled horses, some tied to a spiny calafate bush or a large clump of grass, rarely successful, some drifting free along greener foliage by the river edge. Quiet moments, with horses grazing a land curiously scent free. And in stark contrast to that morning's tarantella, the churning of turning hoofs in the corral as horses snort hot breath with news from a different world. I'll tell you a secret. Horses are whatever you want them to be. Horse people are opinionated, each one instructing you on exactly how to train, feed, ride, relate to, and care for your horse. Take it all with a grain of salt. What they are really telling you about is themselves. The Gaucho Derby threw up some choice examples. This year's race included a small cohort of professional horse trainers. These are people making a living by making horses compliant. They've spent years fixing horses, making them safe. These professionals drew the horses that bucked, that bolted, that would only turn one way, the horses that needed fixing. Unable to imagine a horse not yet silenced a shutdown, these riders spoke of unruly, half-broke horses, uncontainable, whether under saddle or out camping, without the crutch of arena or round yard. I several times asked myself, could these be the very same, rather pedestrian station horses I too was riding? Another group, let's call them riders of a certain age. While sometimes struggling to mount, universally, bodies of older equestrians have a lot of wear and tear, they then rode on with little or no further drama. Then there was John, quiet proof that attitude is everything, experience a distant second. When wife Heidi decided to race the Derby, John, a former Marine, a natural athlete, signed up too. With just 18 months in the saddle, he certainly rides well enough. What impresses more is John's feel for horses. Amadrinado is the gaucho term for this bond between horse and rider. At an early horse station, John drew a great beast of a horse, built like your proverbial brick dunny, and reputably fast too, but so very shy of the saddlebags. Several hours later, John still wasn't mounted and returned that big grey to the corral to read for, saving both horse and rider from a ton of grief. This was, for me, the most impressive bit of horsemanship of Amadrinado in the entire race. Later, I watched him coax another well-built and spooky grey from the last horse station, this time riding it to the finish line. All successful competitors rode 6 different horses in the race. At each horse station, riders drew a number out of a hat, matching one crayoned on each of the horse's rumps, a random allocation. Yet, despite this chance draw, riders usually ended up on the type of horse they were expecting. What I didn't expect, however, was the number of competitors who wanted to take a horse home, some later claiming they'd already considered costs and logistics. Now, Katie's Arabian was a nice enough sort, I guess, but really, what are these people riding at home that they consider the Derby horses better? Would I do it? The Derby? Again? No. It took us a few days, but we came to realise we were simply in the wrong adventure. "Are you enjoying any of it?" asked Fran, somewhere nearer the end of the race than the beginning. "Not a minute," was my instant reply, as Bob the Cob, spying a rare patch of green, yanked me off my feet to the road's edge for a bite. This wasn't a horse race, and, with a few shining exceptions, this was not my tribe. If I'd wanted to trail ride Patagonia, I'd have gathered some friends, bought horses and tack, and set off for 3 months or more, at half the cost. What does it mean to go adventuring in far-flung places? Wanderlust nourishes the soul, but the type of wandering matters. This formulaic derby, while challenging, did nothing to stretch my imagination. Trading security for hardship is deep within us, a biological imperative, but one not realised, at least not for me, by this rustled-together race that sits as it does between, rather than beyond, the known. There was no opportunity to discover if here be dragons.